So today I'm joined by Chris Passmore. Chris is the owner and director of 2SB Management Systems, and they support a wide variety of manufacturing, technology, service and construction businesses in the implementation of UKAS accreditation ISO management system standards. So hi Chris.
Hi there.
How are you today?
Yeah, fine. Yeah, it's a bit hot at long last. I mean, we've been missing the summer, and now we're all wondering whether we want it. It's got so hot, but no, it's lovely. Thank you.
Typical English, isn't it? When we moan about the summer isn't here, and then when it does, we moan it's too hot. But
Absolutely.
So look, Chris, I've introduced your business there, 2SB Management Systems, but look, not everybody will know about UKAS accreditation and ISO management systems. So tell us a bit more about your business.
Well, it's essentially about taking away people's pain. Traditionally, the route for people to get into the ISO management system world is that they start trading, they start their business, and then they start realizing they want to get on tender lists, and the tender list comes in from a large client who they want to work for, and it says, have you got ISO 9001 or answer these 500 questions or 50 questions? The problem is answering those 50 questions never gets them on the tender list. So they just turn around and say, right, well, we better start see if we can get ISO certification. I mean, the ISO standard is developed internationally in Geneva. The last time it was updated, it was 2015, and it basically describes what you should be doing in any well-run business in relatively simple terms. And our job is to effectively fit the standard to the business. So when we look at a client and we're working with them to get them ISO certification, we try to change as little as possible, and make sure that at the same time, what we do change means that they can get ISO accredited. Now, UKAS accredited. UKAS stands for United Kingdom Accreditation Service, and is the umbrella organisation which oversees all the UK certification bodies and ensures they apply a consistent standard across all businesses with ISO certification. You don't have to be UKAS accredited or have UKAS accredited certification, but nowadays most large businesses who you want to work for, government departments, do require you to have UKAS accredited certification. And our job is just to make it as easy as possible for clients to get it. Sometimes once we've helped them get certification, it's not that difficult. They go on their own way and we have very little to do with them. Other times they do realise that our involvement in their business has been constructive, and we carry on working with them for a number of years. So, we've got clients we've been working for 15, 16 years now. That's what we do.
So when you carry on working for them, Chris, what does that involve? Just making sure they're continually improving their system?
Absolutely. I mean, continual improvement is what underpins 9001.
Yeah.
But we also support them with a number of other standards. ISO 14001, which is the environmental standard, 27000, which is the information security management standard, 45001, which is a health and safety standard, and we also do a bit of FSC work as well. So I mean, we basically, the UKAS accredited ISO audit system is visited once a year for a number of days by an independent auditor who ensures that what's going on inside the business meets the requirement of the standard. And our job is to basically make sure we present the company to the auditor the external auditor in the right way. Quite a lot of our work is actually spent doing internal auditing. So we are checking that the client we're working for is actually doing what they're saying they're doing, we check their legal registers, their risk assessments, their production procedures, whether they're shining job tickets off, are they following the procedures which they have laid down. We check their training records. Are they giving people the correct inductions? We check their non-conformance systems. And basically, when the assessor arrives, our job is to make sure that our client doesn't get any non-conformances. We're also looking at environmental compliance, carbon data, aspects and impacts, environmental aspects and impacts. It's a whole range of activities depending on what standards which we're.
So Chris, you mentioned there that a benefit of the accreditation and making sure that you've got the ISO management system standards is about if you want to tender for to do work particularly with large companies. And as we know that's becoming increasingly more important, and large companies are also asking for a lot of things, particularly environmental that you asked for there. It's large companies, the government want to work with other companies that are environmentally friendly, etc., as well as the other things you mentioned. But what are the other benefits to businesses of having the UCAS ISO management system standards in place? Well, let's say look, I don't want to do business with large companies. What's the other benefits to?
Well, I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, when you talk to clients about why have you got ISO, they ultimately they'll say we had to get it for the tender process. I'm not saying always, but the vast majority of times. But I mean, they realise that once they've got it, actually the ISO standard is something of value to the business. It does actually, somebody going around checking what's going on in an informal but professional way is of value. Making sure training records are kept up to date. It's fairly, you may have that person do it for you, but in a small business you may well not. So it's actually more cost effective, bluntly, to have somebody from the outside coming in for one day every 2 months or so, just to check that you're doing it all properly. And from that point of view, it reduces the risk of, particularly perhaps the health and safety executive coming in, or the environment agency, which obviously could be a lot more expensive in terms of compliance costs. So yeah, I mean, we work alongside the managing director, but we actually embed ourselves within the business and help people do it properly.
So look, and by the way, I'm a big supporter of of these of this process. Being a coach, I believe in systems and processes. Business should be run on systems and processes, and
absolutely, yeah.
And like having that has a lot of other benefits as well. Customer satisfaction is more likely that you're going to improve customer satisfaction if you've got efficient and effective processes. Well, efficiency and effectiveness, that's another thing of benefit of ISO management. And actually, it can improve.
You reminded me of something. I went to see a client up in London. It was a really smart client in the King's Road, and they'd got ISO 9000 and they wanted to help with ISO 14000. And it was a very smart lady, and I said to her, "Tell me, why do you have ISO 9001?" And she said to me, "Because it means we can get home on time."
That's it.
And I thought it really encapsulated what it was about. Why they wanted it. It was most of their competitors probably didn't have it, but they knew that having a consistent way of working, which was being checked and followed through, made sure that they delivered their service to their clients better than if they didn't. And it made all their staff happier, because at the end of the day, they could go home knowing the job had been done properly.
Yeah. And then the impact of that is generally improved financial performance as well.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done that analysis, and it would be quite interesting to do, quite difficult to do. But ultimately, I'm quite fairly sure what we do does improve financial performance. It could have a good financial performance and then employ us. So it's difficult to get the causation. I mean, another interesting thing was, when we went into COVID, we hardly lost any clients during the COVID process. Mm-hmm. You might have thought that clients would have wanted to have cut back and, we can save these costs. But actually, okay, we had to go to work remotely, and ISO and the certification bodies, we came up with a way of doing it, and we did a number of implementations during COVID. But people didn't drop the ISO system during that period of time because they knew, I assume, that we were providing value, and that when ultimately COVID ended, they were going to be in a better position by keeping their ISO certification.
So, and look, you mentioned there that that perhaps the data isn't there, but I think we can openly say that if a business runs more efficiently and effectively, which the ISO standards helps a business to do, they're generally going to have improved financial performance.
Absolutely.
So there is you can see that
there is, absolutely.
So look, let's go back to when you started out your business. I think about 18 years ago. Have I got that right?
I think it probably was. I was in my mid to late 40s, and I was the HR director of a printing company, and we were getting smaller and smaller. And when we got down to 70, I made myself redundant. And at the same time, we had the ISO standards, ISO systems 9 and 14 in the business. And obviously, I'd been looking after those alongside being the HR director. And so I turned around to the boss and said, right, well, I'll just become a contractor and I'll look over after those the standards. And then that allowed me to then sell my services to other businesses who also wanted help with their ISO systems. Originally, I was in the printing industry, that's where I started, but we broadened out, and now, as you mentioned in the introduction, we work with a huge range of different businesses.
So had been starting your own business, had that been something that you'd always thought about doing, or was it just the circumstances that led to that?
I think I realised when I was getting into my mid-40s that I was unlikely to get to the top of any business, and I was going to be always a bit vulnerable. So there was a sort of push factor. But no, I mean, I'd been in my family had a business previously, which I'd been involved in. It was always in the back of my mind that, that's probably what I would do sometime. I was fortunate we had our children relatively young. My wife was in a relatively well-paid job. We weren't too encumbered with other financial debt. And, it was, you could say, a bit of a no-brainer from my point of view to take the plunge and, get on with it. Absolutely.
And when you started out on that journey, Chris, what were your plans? What was your vision of what this business would be like in the future?
Okay. Well, I didn't want to call it Chris Passmore Incorporated, because I knew I did have a vision that I was going to create a long-term business. That's what I wanted to do, and I set out right from the outset. Monthly management accounts, invoicing properly. Doing everything you would expect to do in a bigger business, because okay, it costs more money, but that acted as a really good foundation. If I'd sort of set up with I'll keep the accounts on the back of a fag packet and I'll pay myself and all. No, I had a bank balance. I had a proper bank balance. Had a bank account. Purchased in those days Sage. Had a bookkeeper helping me. As I raised invoices on time, and generally tried to be as professional as I could. So, and obviously, it's quite demanding to start with. That's how I did it. And I always had a vision we were going to go somewhere with the business.
And did you, with having that vision, although you wanted it to grow, did you have a vision of how big you wanted it to grow to, or what you?
Well, yeah, I always had a vision of getting to about 6 consultants and £500,000. I reckon that was about the sort of level that I would probably be able to take it to sensibly, and amazingly, we've got there.
Yeah, because I think how many employees have you got now? At 9 or something? Is it? Have I got that?
Well,
right?
yeah, I mean, in terms of active consultants on the ground, there are 6 of us. We're doing. I mean, not everyone is full time in terms of what you and I would traditionally call full time. Yeah. We do have 6 different people out there during the week working with clients.
Great. So you've got to where you planned and your vision of what you wanted to achieve for your business. Now, so let's look at about some of the journey along the way. What was the biggest challenge that you've faced being a business owner and along that journey of achieving your vision of what you've achieved?
There's lots of challenges, aren't they? I mean, they come up one at a time, and you have to. It's a bit like a maze, isn't it? You have to, or a box you've got to unpick or whatever. You have to overcome each challenge that's presented to you. Okay, you could probably see the challenge one ahead. You know what's coming towards you, but first of all, you have to focus on the challenge in front of you. Obviously, generating sales is important, and when there was just one of you, if I was in the office, which actually wasn't that often, I would, what I used to do is chunk up my day. So I knew during the day I would have to do some sales and marketing. I knew during the day I'd have to do some financial work. I knew during the day I'd have to do a bit of social media, and you wrote it out in your diary, and then for an hour I'd do this, and then quarter of an hour, put the washing on or hang out the washing or whatever, and you just chunk your day up, and that's how I got through it to begin with, and making sure you keep the sales pipeline working. It never works perfectly for a small business, but having a disciplined sales management system, following up leads, because people contact you and say, can you provide us with a price? Will you provide the price? And people don't buy this product or service immediately. They want to know what it's going to cost them to do, but they're not probably going to make the decision for 5-6 months time. So you've then got to make a note in your sales management system. I'm going to call them in 5-6 months time. Now you might forget completely who they are, but when it comes up on your screen, call this particular company, you pick up the phone and very quickly you remember what the conversation was about. And I'm not saying 9 times out of 10, but thanks for calling. We're just about to make the decision. How did you know? I knew because you told me 6 months ago. But and that's, you just have to and sell it. Calling up, cold calling, whether it's cold calling or even those calls, aren't the easiest of things to do. It takes guts, or I'd rather go and walk the dog, or sort something else out. So making that work was very important. I mean, I think probably one of the biggest challenges is obviously moving from being a one-man band to actually employing somebody. And somebody suggested there was a young lady at the time who was interested in perhaps working for me, and I spoke to Lucy, and I was having a bit of a challenge with a client. I was under quite a lot. My client base was getting a bit too big for me to manage by myself, and I took the plunge, took on Lucy, and we haven't looked back. And she's now working with me. Well, she's been with me well over 10 years, married with 2 children. I mean, that was one challenging decision, and that requires you to actually trust people to go in front of your clients and do a good job. And obviously, I'd be on the phone to Lucy at the end of the day. How did it go? And she'd say, fine, it's fine. And I mean, she does a brilliant job. And that was obviously an important one. Another important challenge was your back office business system. I looked around and I knew that roughly what I wanted, but I couldn't find exactly what I wanted in terms of raising invoices. I always used to get frustrated with people who would submit invoices which didn't describe the work which had done, for services provided on the 16th of June or whatever. I mean, that's useless. If you have to present that to the person I'm working with, you have to present it to the boss. So what was he doing on the 16th of June? I don't know. No, what you have to do is have to say, we were looking at the fire risk assessments, and we did a fire drill, and we did some training or whatever. If that's on the invoice, that's actually a much more tangible invoice that helps people understand what you're actually doing on those days. But setting that up, making sure we could raise invoices. I was always, I've always paid a basic, good basic, but I was also very keen that we do pay our staff commission as well on top. So I was keen that I did have a commission-based system for my client, my staff. So basically, I then had to get this program written. It cost an awful lot of money. It was pretty hairy, because it was a bespoke system. But after 16 attempts, we got the software working, and that then allowed me to not only support Lucy and myself, but actually then to take on other people and very quickly be able to raise. I mean, initially I was doing weekly invoicing because that was the only way I could keep track of what was going on. But very quickly, this FMT we built allowed me to go over to monthly invoicing because we were capturing the records on a day-by-day basis as to the work we were doing, and allowed us at the end of the month to press the button and it would produce the invoices which we needed. We could then produce a CSV file which we could then put into Sage, or more recently, Xero, and it allowed us to have a very efficient back office system. So that was another big challenge.
Thank you for sharing those, Chris. There's some great sort of things there that I'm sure the listeners of this can sort of pick up on in terms of, what you were talking there about chunking up the day. I think that's a great tip for people to, when they're starting out on business, they've got to do a number of different jobs. They've got to do the operations plus the sales, plus the marketing, plus the finance, all those other things. So I like that. And, you mentioned systems there, creating the, the systems. And I know, what you do is all about systems, but, your client relationship management systems and your invoicing systems, but also the ability to let go that you mentioned there as well. When recruiting people, that's one of the things that holds us back from recruiting people.
Yeah, I see lots of people. I think you've got a really great product or service, but you've got to you're not going to get any bigger unless you start trusting people. And once you've once you've crossed that bridge the first time, I was fortunate that Lucy stayed with us. We haven't been successful every time we've recruited. Another key moment in time was when obviously my son decided to join the business. But you and I are both well aware, you've got a choice. Do you employ somebody who's cleverer than you or less clever than you? And my son is a lot cleverer than me. So, he turned around and said, he'd been to, he was a civil engineer, been to university and done a few other things. And he said, Dad, I want to come and join you. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, well, you train people. And so he came on board, and to begin with, it was quite tough financially, not very tough, but I had to cut what I was paying myself to make sure I could cover my son. But we slowly got it going. We had to take on. There were times, especially when he first joined, where we did have to have what one might call. We didn't go in at a crazy low price because people wouldn't have been credible. But we did have some projects where we wanted to get the project because it was going to help us grow the business, and we would put in a more of a market penetration price and have to accept the consequences of how we would manage that if we were successful in the long term.
There's a question, Chris, that I always like to ask everyone that I interview on these, and is kind enough to join me on these discussions. And that is, what's the best advice that you would give an 18-year-old you? So if you could go back in time and speak to an 18-year-old you, what would you say?
I'd say don't go too quickly, but because one of the things I was in a previous incarnation, I was a Royal Naval officer. I was in the Royal Navy for 10 years, and when you become an officer, or before you become an officer, you're a midshipman, and you spend 6 months on a warship learning how that warship works. And you're given a task book, and that is a unique opportunity. You're never going to have opportunity again. So I think, rather like this sort of chunking up, what I'm saying is from 18 to 22, it's all about getting experience, isn't it? And finding out, getting a broad knowledge of how life works, what you're good at, what you're not so good at, developing relationships with people, and building a really good foundation of knowledge and competence to deal with people. Understand that, sometimes the only way you can communicate with people, particularly in South London, is by talking about football. You know, football is such an important language. So, you know, you don't have to be an expert on football, but understand there are things which make other people tick, which you've actually got to relate to. And you know, when you get to 25 or 30, okay, you can then push on and develop further. Okay, you and I know there are some people who are very business savvy from, should I say Richard Branson and people like that from a very early age. But for, should we say, mere mortals, I think getting a broad experience of life early on in your working life, learning how to relate to people, getting dirty, understanding what it's like on the front line, should we say, is a really important skill. Because the point is, you're never ever going to get that opportunity again. Once you get your suit and tie on, you can't go back to getting that experience. That experience has gone. But nonetheless, it's so important in forming your competence as a leader as you go into the next phase of your life.
I like it. So be open-minded.
Oh, right, sorry.
No, be broad. Be just absorb everything and learn.
Learn. Absolutely.
I like the other thing that you added in there as well, as about understanding others and understanding sort of communication as well. So you've got some great advice there. Thank you very much for that, Chris. So Chris, look, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about your business and your journey. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope that's been useful.
Yeah, that has indeed. Thanks a lot.